You're listening to Quiero Dinero, a personal finance podcast for the modern Latina. I'm your host, Janice Torres Rodriguez, and I'm here to help you be poderosa with your dinero. I'm an engineer, a blogger, and an entrepreneur that built a $50,000 side hustle, and I'm obsessed with all things personal finance. On this show, we're going to talk about how to make dinero, how to keep your dinero, and how to make it grow. Are you ready? Vámonos. Hola, mi gente. Welcome back to another episode of Yo Quiero Dinero, the podcast. This is your host, Janice, and today we're going to be talking about how to become your own boss with Kerry Deliz, financial coach and online business strategist. If Kerry's name sounds familiar, it's because she was one of the panelists on our Side Hustle Summit 2, which just wrapped up October 30th. We had over 160 people register for this event. Thank you so much for your support. We cannot believe the amazing success that we had with this event, and we can't wait to bring you more events. So if you want to stay on top of all of the amazing things that we are cooking up here at Yo Quiero Dinero, definitely follow us on Instagram at Yo Quiero Dinero Podcast. Follow our blog, yoquierodinero.podcast.com. Subscribe to this podcast. Share, rate, review, subscribe. Do all the things, y'all. I mean, we're even on TikTok, so come and hang out with us there too. Now, back to the episode. Kerry Deliz is a financial coach and business strategist who works with women to become their own sugar daddies. Kerry began her career in e-commerce over a decade ago, and in 2009, she began doing financial coaching in New York City as a volunteer, and that was where her finance journey began. She knew she had to get her financial shit together, and her wake-up call came when she moved in with her boyfriend, now husband. After ignoring the truth of her money situation, she realized she had over $70,000 in debt. So let's learn how Kerry got her finances in order, quit her corporate job to start her own business, and how she now helps women become badasses with their money. One more big announcement before we get into today's episode. We are officially launching Side Hustle Moguls, our new digital business academy. Side Hustle Moguls is our exciting new education platform for aspiring entrepreneurs like you to learn the skills you need to take your dreams and turn them into real products and real companies. We're excited to provide you with all the tools you need to start a successful side hustle that you can scale so you can finally achieve the financial freedom and independence that you deserve. To stay in touch with all of our updates, find out about our launch date, follow us on Instagram at Side Hustle Moguls, and sign up on our waitlist at sidehustlemoguls.com. You take care of your body by exercising, eating right, and getting enough sleep. But are you doing the same for your mind? On this podcast, we're always talking about mindset and mental health as the foundation for financial wellness. So we're super proud to partner with BetterHelp to get you access to professional, affordable therapy right at your fingertips. Even with health insurance coverage, traditional therapy costs over $100 per session. And that's if you can even get an appointment. Online counseling is an effective, convenient, and affordable way to get help with many issues. You can chat with your therapist at your convenience in whatever mode you're most comfortable with. Just take a short quiz and get personally matched with one of BetterHelp's professional, licensed, and experienced counselors and get the support and guidance you need to start making a change. As a reminder, online therapy is not suitable for someone who's suffering from a severe mental health condition that makes them a danger to themselves or others. Download the BetterHelp app today and get started with 10% off exclusively for Yo Quiero Dinero podcast listeners. Just use the discount code DINERO, that's DINERO, and you can get 10% off your first month. You can also go to betterhelp.com/dinero for the same offer. BetterHelp, affordable, private, online counseling, anytime, anywhere. Kerry, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. One, because you're a Jersey girl like me, and two, because you have a dirty fucking mouth, just like me too.
I love it. Birds of a feather.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kerry Deliz, and I am an online business strategist and financial coach. So I work with my clients in two ways: to get their businesses up and running online, and then to increase their profitability, both in their business and their, in their personal finances. And in a nutshell, I just like to call that being your own sugar daddy.
I love that. And I think When people think about entrepreneurship, they think of like all the magical shit, like, oh, I get to be my own boss, I get to make my own money. But you actually need to figure out how to be profitable. Otherwise, you're just running a business that's going to fail. So, we're going to get into all of that. But I want to start off with how you kind of got into this space, what your background, your career trajectory looked like, and how you got to where you are today.
All right. So my career trajectory, it's funny, it actually did start with some level of, finances in the picture. So I was in economics undergraduate major, and I at the time I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And this was like 12 years ago. And I was interning for a nonprofit that was like a consumer advocacy nonprofit in New York City, before financial coaching online was like a really big area of expertise. And I did mostly like volunteer work. And I kind of figured out that I was like, all right, I don't know if I really want to be a lawyer. It's not like Law and Order or anything like that. So I ended up going into e-commerce, and I really, I fell in love with the online space, and I worked for a major company for a little over 5 years, and then went out on my own. I had an e-commerce store of my own with a partner for about 2.5 years, and was just like, you know what? The best part about this is the website, and I really, miss the really digging into like my own finances and supporting people in that way, because I was able to figure that out in my business, but I still had this like urge to be like, what do other people do when they leave their jobs and they don't have a 401k? And I also had my own financial shit to untangle. So that is like the kind of try to make it as a straight line as possible.
Got it. Okay, so there's so much in what you just said. So first, my first question to you is when you say e-commerce, what does that mean?
So so yeah, I worked for a travel company, and it's a booking.com. It used to be Priceline. And we sold hotel rooms on the internet. So anything e-commerce for me is, any sort of transactions of some sort of goods. I guess hotel rooms could be considered goods that can be done online. So Amazon, any of the big online stores, I guess like Nasty Gal and all those kind of those vendors. Booking.com is that for hotels.
Got it. Yeah, so I think e-commerce is definitely the way of the future. It allows people to open businesses literally from your house. All you need is like a computer and an idea, hopefully an idea that makes money. And it's funny because I work for a major consumer goods manufacturing company, and I feel like it's only in the past like 3 years that they actually are thinking about like e-commerce and like the experience that customers have online with their products, because they're like always been so heavily focused on the big box stores and people coming to physically get their products. And I think the pandemic has had a big impact on businesses large and small, because they're like, yo, I still need to sell stuff, but people aren't really trying to leave their house. So how do we fix that? And so e-commerce is like a totally big buzzword right now, I think, when it comes to entrepreneurship.
Yes, totally. And then there are, really wonderful companies in the space like Shopify, which provide, that's my whole wheelhouse, Shopify. I do some work in like WordPress and Squarespace, but primarily my work is in Shopify. And I mean, it can be a business in a box, when you're first starting out. And they also have like an insanely on fire stock with the pandemic. And they're like a really nice company. They're Canadian. When you call their customer service, they're like amazing. They work in integrity. So I think they just have like such an opportunity to lead the charge and support businesses to like get them online, because it's not rocket science. It's not the easiest
Hmm.
thing in the world, because it's so different, I'm sure, as you're experiencing in your job. Like it is really different. But once you get it, once it's set up, it's like, how did we do things any other way?
Absolutely. Okay, so you have a really interesting story, which you started to touch on in your intro. So basically, you worked in industry for a while and you decided to go off on your own. And we're going to get into more details around like your self-employment entrepreneurship journey. But you also mentioned that you had financial shit in your personal life that you had to also work past in order to really be living your best life financially in all of these different aspects of your life. So, can you talk us through some of that shit you were trying to work through?
Oh, yes, I can. And Janice, I realized I'm like, you know what? I haven't really gone in depth about
Mm.
that story. So there is one big major detail that I'm going to include in this because it's helpful, I think. So when I left my job, a long story short, I dated my now husband for about 2.5 years. We dated. He lived in the U.S. and then he was like traveling, and then he moved back to the U.S. to be with me. So we worked for the same company. And I was like, we don't want to work together and live together. So I'm going to, start doubling down on my 401k. I'm going to save for an emergency fund. And then I'm going to save for like 6 months of figuring my shit out, figuring out.
Your FU money.
Yes, my FU money. And I did have quite a fat sum of student loans. I had over $50,000 in student loans. But, it was manageable. Like it really was. It was only like $150, $180 a month. It sucked, but it was manageable. It wasn't going down fast enough, but it wasn't the worst. So I had that mapped out and I had a pretty good game plan, but he and I hadn't gone, at length into detail about finances, which would have been fine. But when I left my job about 2 weeks later, I had an envelope in the mail from the IRS that I was being audited and I owed them over $10,000.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, I don't talk about this too much. I think I'm traumatized, but now I feel like so there's a happy ending. So I had everything figured out, and this is, I think, something that we all try to touch on Instagram, right? Is like this game of like whack-a-mole that we play with our finances. Right? Like if you get one area in order, you kind of have to make sure that everything's in order because that kind of threw everything off, right? And I was like, well, I have to start making money now, and I have to like pay half of the rent and pay half of these things. And when it came down to it, and I don't try to tell people how to like be with their money and figure their shit out, for he and I, the thing that made sense was to like combine some of our finances and let me double down, get some of this balance down, fucking figure out if I actually owe the IRS this money. And in the meantime, I had to act like I did, right? Like you're kind of guilty until proven innocent.
Right.
So, we made a decision to like, okay, I'm going to put X amount down. We're going to start paying, I had to like double down on my plan that I kind of planned on doing for like, I don't know, 5-10 years. I was like, oh, you know how it is with student loans. So we like hacked our way. It was a wobbly first like 6 months. This is our first time living together. He moved here from outside of the country. And it really ended up being the smartest thing to do to like get that, for me to be able to just like double down, figure that piece out, hire a professional to take care of the IRS situation. But my debt probably took a little bit over a year to pay down, but the IRS audit that lasted like a year and a half. And I didn't end up being on the hook for my money because that's what happens when you hire professionals.
Mm. That's really interesting. So I'm curious because a lot of people have anxiety about talking about finances with their partners. I think it's like they say, money is one of the top reasons why people get divorced. So, what advice would you give to people who are like, damn, I want to talk to my partner about money, but I don't even know like how to approach this in a way that's not going to be like a freaking shit show?
Yeah, it really was challenging. I mean, he moved here from the Netherlands, right? Like he didn't move from the town over. Like, also we had been together in both, long distance and from long distance and in the same city for nearly 3 years. Like, we knew each other. And this was really something that I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'll have it figured out. But when we were trying to like figure out, you pay this much, you pay that much, it was just like the smart thing to do. We both knew was kind of like, let's just like double down. The debt will be mine to pay off. But like if you're paying a little bit more on the rent and I'm doing grocery, like whatever, we're going to figure out how to make this be like as equitable as possible. But my commitment was that he was not paying down my debt, right? Because I had a thing that I was like, well, I want to figure that part out. And like we did all this stuff where we had a separate bank account and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, we knew for ourselves, because it's a personal decision. We're like, look, he didn't move over here because I was going to be his forever girlfriend. And that we didn't want to be sitting here, splitting hairs over like a check at dinner. But that's like a personal decision to come to. So what I would say is really look. What I would really say is have the conversation, because if the conversation around money is what's going to make them run, it probably was not going to work out anyway.
True story. That is the fucking truth right there.
Like, people are like, oh, but that's bullshit because like this person had $100,000 debt. I'm sorry, that's conditional love then. We don't just like so easily throw our hands up and be like, oh, I'm done. Like if you're committed to figuring it out, commitment is something that you do, not when you feel like it. You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta be like fucking in there. And I was like, look, my commitment is that you don't have to take care of the debt, but like, yeah, sometimes you may be paying more on something than the other. And he was like, that makes more sense than like us trying to sit here and split like little dollar amounts up. Also, look, I was coming to the table with like, my game plan around like, my 401k, my emergency fund, my startup for my business fund. So I wasn't just here like, hey, I'm flat broke, help me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there was also something else, figuring out how to navigate our financial system and like walk him through that.
Because he's coming from another country. So he's like, what the hell are you Americans doing? Because y'all are batshit crazy.
Yeah, he's like, well, we're normal and we pay like $20 a month for our phone and we pay like 0.01% interest for college. So I guess I need some hand holding. We actually just wrapped up the green card process. So that was very expensive to have a lawyer, because trust me, I learned with the IRS, I'll get me a lawyer for my green card for my husband.
And with the Trump administration in place, yeah, you can't be messing with immigration right now.
No. So we were in the throes of that for almost 2 years. So we've had our fair share of like financial things to go through together, and that first one really prepared us.
Well,
to double down and operate as a unit.
absolutely, yo. Like these vows that we take are not supposed to be like a joke, like for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. Like if you think that debt's the worst thing you're gonna deal with in a marriage, girl, you better get your whole ass life together because you ain't ready to be married, okay?
Exactly.
You ain't ready.
Have a long-term boyfriend. I will not knock you for that. Like marriage is hard as shit. It's worth it. But it's hard as shit. Especially when you're quarantining together and you are like team 24/7.
Yo, I see no lies. No lies at all.
So,
All right.
yep.
I love that advice. That's fantastic. And I think it's something that like more people need to talk about because, when you're trying to build a legacy and build wealth, like if you have a partner that's not down with that shit, it's going to be a lot harder. You're like trying to row up like a river against the current and it's not going to work.
Exactly. And it set us up. It set the ground floor in place for us to start pursuing fire together, for us to like figure out, because what like our long-term goals were, conversations about like where we want to live, and really like doubling down on it. And like now our life is so fucking different because of those decisions that we made 5 years ago. And then also like the fear that we have around like spending money, which you and I talk about that. We're like, look, we like nice things. My dog needs to be laced. I need some champagne. It was there, we walked into getting a lawyer, like, and not. I mean, look, there's a certain level of privilege, but not from a pompous place. That we were like, I'm happy to give this motherfucker my money. Take the money, please. Like, I'm so grateful that we could like afford it. And it opened up those conversations for us, which are so crucial right now. Because I told you, like, he's been furloughed, and then I had the drama with my Instagram, which is a client, generating channel for me. So I'm really glad that we like back then we're like, wow, this is awkward and messy and embarrassing, and we're gonna do it anyway.
Absolutely. It is the ultimate like sign of love, I think, to be vulnerable about your whole shit, and that includes your money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so it sounds like y'all are in a place where you know what you want, you're doing what you need to do with your money, but it wasn't always like that, right? What was your relationship like with money growing up?
Hot mess express. I have I have very smart, parents and grandparents, but there was always just the like fear of God kind of conversation around money. Like you gotta like there's not enough of it, and when there is, you cannot touch it and put it in a savings account. And then, I could see there was always stress around money, even though my mom would kind of act like she had her shit together. You could pick up on like, I remember clearly one year we were going out for my birthday and she only wanted to go to like this one restaurant. And I was 16, I was a brat. And I was like, but I don't even eat the food from there. And my stepfather was like, why are you riding her so hard about going to this place? She's like, because I have a fucking coupon to go.
Yo, mom is the thrift queen from day one.
Yes, for sure. And she's gotten like so much better with that. She's still cheap as hell and like very proud of it. And I'm like, great, more power to you. As long as I don't have to worry about you in retirement, I am so happy that you're cheap. But it was just always like such a fucked up, paradigm around money, that it was like money isn't everything. But then when they had it, they were really happy. Or we can't afford that. But then there was like money for like things that I was like, if we can't afford that, like there was never like contextualizing, right? Like we can't afford that right now, but here's what we're gonna do towards it.
Mm.
Until I was like a teenager, and then I think my mom kind of tried to play catch up. Because when you think back, I'm like, well, she was probably in her late 30s, early 40s, or no, mid 40s, and was probably starting to just take her money seriously. Like we forget
Mhm.
that our parents are still growing up too. And and then I was like, why is she like slamming the brakes on me and like trying to talk to me about this other way of being with money, um which was more like, oh, have your money work for you. But like no one ever told me what that meant. They
Mm.
were just kind of like, you don't want to work for your money, have your money work for you. And I was like, okay, cool, how do we do that? And it was like, there was no Google. It was just like, well, you're a smart girl, go figure it out. So it was a lot of like, that just hardcore boot camp all the time. Like it just always had to be hard. That
Yeah.
I could
And
it just always had to be a struggle.
I'm curious if you kind of had the same experience as me, where like there was a very prescriptive idea of what success was. Like you need to go to college, you need to get a good job, you need to buy a house, and then quote unquote you've made it.
Yes, for sure. Like my mother, when she was in high school, was accepted to pre-med at Columbia University. And she always downplays it. She's like, well, they needed to fill like quotas, and like I was like smart but not that smart. Like there was that, not like owning it kind
Mhm.
of thing. And she didn't end up sticking with it because she was like, I just wasn't cut out to be a doctor, and like it wasn't my thing. She was more like a hippie kind of person. But still, it ended up being that it was like, first she was a teacher and then she was a nurse, right? Like, so the job that women are expected to have, and doting, and well educated. But like I'm like, yo, you pay all this money for school, and like teachers, it's we don't treat teachers very well historically. We never have. Financially. So yes, it was still like, yeah, but you should look at those things. Something reliable, something you can
Mhm.
count on, a good name, on your resume for a school that you went to. And I bought into it for a while. But I've always like had a rebel heart. So it just like never fucking worked. Like
Yo, you sound just like me. Like I feel like we are kindred spirits in
no,
that
I
sense.
do too. I do too. You know that. I tell you that. I'm like, yeah, we're like, twin flame kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious, like, you're in this corporate setting, but you're thinking and dreaming about doing your own thing. So, like, what was that transition process like for you? What was your game plan?
It's funny because I didn't have a vision of me with my own business per se, but I just was like, I want to work for like a really innovative startup, right? I wanted to get in on a ground floor. So when I left corporate, really exciting startups were starting to employ people like Airbnb and Uber. So, you don't know what you don't know. So I
Mm-hmm.
went to take, when I left, I just knew that I was like, I can't have a fucking boss who's going to be so bought into the lie because I'll never be able to be enrolled. I'm always going to be looked at as sort of like a pain in the ass at work.
Yeah.
And I grew up kind of like the loudmouth, the pain in the ass, and like you carry that around. I'm like, I just don't know if I'm going to fit in anywhere because I'm always like mouthy and whatever else, which is
Mm-hmm.
fine. I really like that about myself, but I'm like, I can't do it for 40 years. Um, so I took some classes, some like digital marketing classes, and I met my mentor. She taught a Facebook ads class, and I was like, yo, people like her exist. So she was like 25 years old and had her own digital agency and doing Facebook ads and like totally worked on her own. And I was like, can I take you out to dinner? Because I just want to learn more about like this thing that you do. So from there, that's when I started being like, damn, maybe I could like have my own business. That's when I met my partner and my first business partner. And she had this really cool boutique by my apartment, and it wasn't online. And I was like, I just started learning Shopify and WordPress. And she was like, do you want to, like, literally, we had met like 3 times, but we hit it off. And she's like, do you want to be my business partner and like with the web shop? And I was like, all right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was kind of fucking crazy thinking back. But whatever. It ended fine. It wasn't like it didn't end in like tears or anger. It just was not, like I said, I liked the website the most. I didn't want to really do the tending to customers and sourcing clothing. I was like, I want an all digital business.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I didn't have much of a vision for myself when I was in corporate. I just was like, I knew that it needed to be something that was less like stodgy and uptight, where I could like be myself. And then when I met my mentor and my first business partner, I was like, dude, these girls are like 4 or 5 years younger than me and they're doing it. Like, why wouldn't I be able to do it?
Got it. Okay. So after that first experience with your first business partner, then how did you transition into what you do today?
So she and we both kind of realized like we were just not aligned. It took like 2 years, and we did some really cool shit together, but it was very clear that she wanted to do like a lot of the sourcing and be in there with, the kind of traditional e-commerce physical goods store. And I had gotten really good at like Shopify and Squarespace. I was doing some coding, and I was like, I kind of was like, well, I could make money, and also like I need to make some money,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't doing that anymore. And I was like, let me just try to get my first client. And there was some leadership classes that I was taking, just like, working on myself. And there was a therapist in there, and I was like, hey, you need a website. And she was like, you're right, my website's really bad. And then from there, I just was, getting clients pretty consistently. And the conversation was still really present for me in those conversations, like people wanting to make more money and wanting to increase their profitability, and talking to like my friends, my family. Now, during all this time in the background, Isaac and I had been really doubling down, learning more about fire, figuring, really understanding our benefits, getting a financial advisor, making bigger investments. And I was like, you know what? I wanted to do this like forever. And I'm like, I'm going to build it up the same way that I had, with my getting my first web design client, that I'm like, I'm going to work with women to get their financial shit together. And
Mm-hmm.
the same way that like, people would ask me about digital, it would start, I'm sure you get the same thing, like, hey, I don't understand my 401k. I don't understand my health insurance. I don't understand this thing. And you're like, okay, this is my signal. This is like my smoke signal that
Mm-hmm.
I'm going in the right direction.
Yeah. So your initial clients, were they like word of mouth, or were you advertising? Like, how did you go about actually getting clients?
So my initial web design clients, those were primarily word of mouth and so like referrals and people that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And then for my first few financial coaching clients, one was a referral, and one was had found me online.
Yeah.
Another was somebody who saw my, my hyperlink on someone's website, and they're like, "Oh, you do this. I saw, they're like, I want to learn profit first, and I want to do Shopify." And I was like, all right, perfect. This is kind of sort of getting somewhere, because I think there's also like when you do a couple things, people are like, "What do you do?" I like made a TikTok the other day that I'm like, I'm just going to tell everyone I'm an accountant.
That's easier, right?
I'm like, if I try to explain profit first and getting your financial shit together and strategies to increase, your profitability of your sales online, that's like a lot of words.
Yo, it's true though, because like I always talk about, I have like nine, I think maybe 10 income streams at this point. I fucking lost count. But it's just like, then people are asking, like, what do you do exactly? I'm like, listen, girl, we could be here all day. It's not about like, that you got to have one income stream. Like, that's, first of all, that's reckless. Like, especially with everything we're seeing from the pandemic, like, right now is not the time to be relying on any one income stream to be paying your bills, because that shit can be snatched right out from under you. And then what?
Yep.
Okay. But especially as an entrepreneur, like you have to know the art of pivoting, because if you had a physical storefront boutique that all of a sudden was shut down for 6 months because of a fucking pandemic, you still need to make money, right? So now you got to be like, oh, I got to get online. I have to be able to sell things via e-commerce. And now I got to worry about shipping stuff. Like, entrepreneurship is the art of pivoting, if you ask me. Like, if I had to summarize it in one sentence.
No, it certainly is. And it really makes sense now that I'm on to like, a few people who I've done both profit first, and Shopify product optimization with. It really makes sense that they're like, hey, at some point you start to notice your profit margins are kind of slim and you want to optimize things. And then you get into conversations where they'll see my Instagram and they're, well, my old Instagram. They'd be like, I want to start investing. I want to have my business have like an emergency fund. I want to, get really empowered around these conversations. So they do make sense once you're in the weeds and people start to learn. I think the world that you and I are in, it's so new for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
as far as everyone's concerned, though, who ask me too many times what I do, I'm like, I'm a fucking accountant. As
That's
far
all
as
you need to
you're
know.
concerned, I'm an accountant.
I love that. Okay, so you mentioned profit first. Can you talk about what that actually means?
Yes. So profit first is basically, so like the white envelope system of budget,
Mm-hmm.
kind of old school, or separating all your bank accounts to have, one for your bills, one for your play money, one for your investments. It is like that, but for your business finances. Um,
Okay.
so there, when you get paid, you need to take your taxes out, and you need to keep them somewhere so that you're not spending them. You've got to have an owner's draw. So really, what the system is, it's based on creating like 5 to 6 business accounts, one for your owner's draw, one for your expenses, one for taxes, and one for profit. So those are, yeah, 4. And you can divvy them up by percentages. I'm doing this like off the top of my head without my Excel spreadsheet to explain it as best as I can. But basically, say that you make $10,000 a month and you're like, I want to pay, I'll take 50% to pay myself 5,000. I will take 2,500 to, do 25% to my expenses, 15% to my taxes, and then 5% for my profit. So you want all those
Mm,
numbers to add up to 100%. And then you could play with them. Some months you may need to pay yourself more and cut down on expenses. Some months you may just not be profitable. You know what I mean? Like you may have like a cash poor month if it was one where you're making a lot of investments. um,
got it.
so it really is just a way for you to give all of your dollars a job and tell them what to do instead of worrying like, where did they go?
That makes so much sense. And I feel like, it's easy to understand that concept when you're talking about your personal budget. But then when you're talking about a business and there's like so many moving parts, I think that that makes so much sense, because then you actually start understanding like what's coming in, what's going out, versus just like waiting for the money to come in and then trying to figure out where to put it.
Yes, exactly. It really does. What can happen, and I'm not sure if this is your experience, but I know for me, like the first couple of months, I was like, I wanted to have every cool thing for my business after like I had the basics.
Mm,
I'm like, oh, I want to try this out. I want to try that out. And it's like, you can get shiny object syndrome just the way we do, shopping
yeah.
and buying shit. And, you don't want it to be at the cost of like being able to pay yourself. Because if you don't have, an owner's draw, you don't really have a business.
Right. Otherwise, you have an expensive ass hobby, sis.
Hobby. And the IRS will only let you report a loss 2 years in a row. So,
So
yeah.
you have 2 years to get your business profitable, or what?
I don't know, or whether it's like an urban legend amongst, tax professionals.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that it's like after 2 years they'll just consider it a hobby.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what you could do is just like end your LLC and start a new one.
Mm-hmm.
When I ask my accountant, I'm like, so what do people do in that instance? Because sometimes profit first is just not realistic. If you have a lot of employees, it's fucking hard. You can't just tell them I can't pay you this month.
Right.
The person who's going to take the hit on the salary will be the owner.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure that like after 2 years, it's considered a hobby, and you may need to just like start a new LLC or just make yourself profitable.
Yeah. Hola, mi gente. Let me tell you, when I was first coming up with this podcast, I only had a name. I had no idea what I was actually going to do to distribute this out to the masses. That is until I found the Anchor app. The Anchor app is a completely free tool that you can use to get your podcast on and popping right now. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so you can hear it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more, and you can share it with your tias and your primas and anybody else that you think would love your podcast. The great thing is that you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. So if you're ready to start your podcast, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. So I'm curious, what's like one major mistake that you see a lot of new entrepreneurs making, especially when it comes to managing their money?
Shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Just wanting to like spend on things that are like only aesthetic driven. Like I'm all about having a good looking website, but like one that converts, right? Like it doesn't just need to be good looking. It needs to have some bones to it that gets it, to have people take action and actually buy from you.
Mm-hmm.
Or like doing, shit like buying followers on Instagram. I'm like, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're never going to be able to sell to these people. So I think those are some of them. And then like I think all of us struggle in the beginning with being visible.
Mm.
Like it's just like, oh God, I don't want to like get on here and meh, 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 meh. Like I was so mad about, my drama with Instagram because I'm like, fuck, I have to start over again. And I'm like, I'll get on camera and whatever, I'll curse and be whatever, I don't care. But even still, when I had to like start over again and, go back at it, I'm like, oh God. So I
Yeah, because you feel like the momentum was gone.
you feel like the momentum's gone, and the like the head trash that we all have, your mindset, it's going to kick up. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
kick up and be like, oh, why are you even bothering to do this again? This is stupid and blah blah. Whatever your internal dialogue is, that's discouraging. And I don't have any inspiring words around it. Just like fucking do it. Eventually we're just gonna have to do it. I can't really inspire. It's not that scary. It's not that bad. And something really empowering is that nobody's thinking about you. So
Mm.
it's hurtful, but it's also like whatever. Everybody's
Yeah,
doing their own thing, so no one's really hung up on what you're doing.
I love that. So I'm curious because you said like, your mom kind of values this like comfortable, stable lifestyle, and clearly that was not what was cut out for you. So did you have any kind of internal obstacles when it came to declaring that you were going to leave the corporate world, and like were you afraid of how your family was going to take that? How did you manage that?
Oh my God. My mother still is like, what are you doing? Do you ever think about going back? I'm like, Mom, I could literally be like on the cover of Forbes, and my mom will be like, but I still don't understand what she's doing. Because she's just like a pain in the ass. So I have a constant internal dialogue. Like I love my mom, but I can't really say that she's always been very like generous with me and like she loves me to death, but not the most like inspiring for me to keep going. She's kind of like, all right, that's good, that thing that you do, whatever it is. Those things and the people that you hang out with on Instagram and whatever. She doesn't get the whole thing. So the internal dialogue is just kind of like sound them out. You know what I mean? Like I'm like they're never gonna get it, but she does know that like I'm not missing no meals. My bills are paid. I get to do nice things for my family. My future's taken care of. So it's not like that bad. Like she's not like it's not like they have to have an intervention with,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's definitely something. Yeah, you know, when you're constantly kind of explaining like, oh, I'm a financial coach, and people are like, what is that? Or I'm a business strategist. Oh, what is that? You know, I'm a consultant. People,
Right.
I mean,
That's like the most vague shit you can tell anybody. I'm a
I'm like, dude,
consultant.
just whatever. If you're not an ideal client, why do you care? Um, so yeah, that that doesn't always feel like great, but then I'm also like, but like my life is great. And
Right.
my money's great and like my shit is great, so that's like really good. That's the kind of the thing that keeps the engine going for me.
Well, I think that's a really important message because I feel like so often we look for like external validation for the shit that we're doing. And sometimes, like, girl, the only validation you need is the money in the bank. Like, who gives a shit what anybody thinks about what you're doing? Like, I mean, when my mom sees me like food blogging, she's like, do you really get paid for this? I'm like, yes, mother. Would you like me to send you the receipts? Because the shit sounds like a fantasy. And sometimes I feel like it is, but it's really fucking not. So, like, don't be so caught up on trying to like get other people's approval of what you're doing. If it makes sense for you and it's paying your bills, like, girl, live your life.
Yes, exactly. Like it's never going to be comfortable. There is a certain, I don't know, like in your job, I'm like certain that you've, climbed the ladder, and with every bump up, you're kind of like, oh my God, there's like a little bit more visibility, a little bit more responsibility. It's jarring. When you're out on your own, it's like all kinds of shit. Like I remember I was so stressed out the first week that I became a manager. I was like, yo, I am a total fucking like nut job. And I'm like trying to like be like take myself seriously and like manage people, and it like freaked me out. But nothing freaks you out like the first time having to get on camera and just be like talking to people, and they're
Yo, that is
actually
a whole aspect. Like, I still am at my job. Like, why'd y'all put me in charge of anybody? Like, I can't even manage my own shit, but let's not talk about that.
exactly like it's crazy. So, and that head trash just it doesn't go away. These
Hmm.
celebrities talk about it.
Yeah, that's so true. It doesn't matter what level of success you get, you're still going to have the internal critic telling you, girl, what the fuck do you think you're doing?
Yep,
Stop it.
exactly. So it's really just kind of being with it and being like, ha ha ha, that's you again, being a dickhead and like whatever.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm curious, like, what's your best advice for somebody who's ready to pivot or redirect their career that they're just like over? They want to do something completely different.
I think that the one thing that I wish that not that I wish I had done, because I don't, I pretty much, I financially prepared myself pretty well to leave my job, but I do wish that maybe I had started on a side hustle to kind of dip my toe in the water. Um, I think that I found out, that like there was this whole other digital world outside of the big e-commerce company that I was in, that there was just so many little cogs in the wheel that could be filled. And I was like, wow, there's so many tools to learn and so much of it is free. And like, this is so cool. So I wish that I had just like taken a little bit more time to see what was available to me. But I say that from a place of, because I wish that I had that extra money when the IRS came knocking.
That makes a lot of
You
sense.
can never be too prepared. You know what I mean? But I do think that's like a smart thing, is like find out more, and also find out what your job has available to you. I could have had so many more like certifications and classes and just other benefits that I could have utilized that I just kind of like didn't even pay attention to
Mm-hmm.
because I was so focused on like I want to, go do something else. So
Yeah.
like yeah, milk the cow. Find out what is available there because I think that's also like a pretty solid way to go about just general like abundance in our lives. Like look at what you're working with first before you're trying to move on to, the road to $1 million starts with like $1.
Right.
Losing 20 pounds starts with 1 pound. And and I still do, I can from time to time have such a black and white sense of things. And in my job, I was like, there's not going to be anything here for me to like learn or whatever. And I'm like, damn, I probably could have got like extra classes and extra training. And, I don't know how much time I would have saved myself because it is different when you're on your own. You better figure everything out. But I would say see what you're working with, what's already available to you. Take some classes on like Google. Take set up a little website for yourself. Like see how you feel putting things out there and telling people, making it visible and saying, hey friends, I made a thing. And it's a little bit embarrassing, but check it out anyway.
I love that advice. I'm such a firm believer in using your main hustle to start a side hustle because you have like stable income, right? Or you assume you have stable income.
Yep.
And you can kind of invest that into this idea and kind of test it before you just pull the parachute and hope to not, you know, fall crashing down. Um,
Yep, exactly. I was fortunate that I started making money within like 2 months of leaving, but that might not have been the case.
mhm.
And it was also the money got made from like a desperate place because of this other bill. So yeah, I could point to all the things that were going right and like good for me, but like all with finances, we know curveballs just like they're coming. They're always coming.
Yes, absolutely. That is great advice. And I feel like that sort of talks about what you said, talks about like this idea of kind of abundance, right? Like you have to not go into an idea thinking that you're going to fail, because I feel like then you're just going to start channeling like this level of stress and putting more pressure on yourself than you have to. Like I think before you even start on this whole journey to entrepreneurship, you really have to start believing that you are worthy of like generating your own income without anybody else being involved, like anybody else being like a job or a boss or some shit. You have to believe that first, because that's how you're going to move in the world.
You really do. And, it's also somebody the other day, I was just so stuck on a project and I'm like, I just don't know how much further I can take this thing. And my husband's like, well, I mean, you stitched together like five different, programs and pieces of code and made this thing happen. It's like 80% good enough. So, right, you want to straddle a line between having something be good enough to launch and also being optimistic. And like as an entrepreneur, we just have to like sort of by virtue just be optimistic because you can't you won't you may end up harming yourself if you're just like, wow, this probably isn't going to go anywhere, but let me try it anyway. Like it just
Hmm.
doesn't even make sense. Like you have to kind of just really, really believe in the thing. Even if some of it is pumping yourself up and being like, I don't know, but I'm still gonna fake it till I make it. That
Yeah.
like I believe in this thing.
You gonna figure that shit out because
Yeah,
there's no other option.
exactly, exactly. And it's something that it will be the thing that keeps you like really grounded and centered because there's not always going to be a lot of money. There's not always going to be even once you've made it. There's peaks and valleys, and the thing that you can come back to is something that nobody can take away from you. Like ultimately, money can come and go, but like your rooted belief in yourself and being grounded and the ability to ground yourself is something that no one can ever take away from you.
I love that. All right. So, one of the things that we've bonded on over social media is this idea of, starting a business, meaning that you sign up for like Avon or some other bullshit ass multi level marketing company. And so I am a firm believer that all these companies are just out to fucking ruin your life, take your money, and rip you off. And I know you feel the same way. So, can you talk a little bit about like why women should steer clear of these damn Herbalives and multi-level marketing companies of the world?
You know, you should stay away from them because, first of all, like terrible people, like Donald Trump fucking was like had some attachment to an MLM. So, like, I don't want a whiff of that on me, right?
Right. Wasn't that like Trump University or some shit?
No,
Oh God.
there was like some kind of network marketing thing. It might have been Trump University. So just like that alone, I'm like, ew. And also, if you start to take a look around the room, at these pitches, you see people who could be your aunt, who could be your grandmother, who could be your mother, your sister, your coworker. I find them to be very predatory towards like Southeast Asian, Latina, Black women. Like I just find, and for me, I'm like, what's up? You know what I mean? What's going on? And the ringleader doesn't always look like them. And I'm like, what's going on? This is like something that for me is already like I'm put off. And any job that you go to doesn't tell you you have to pay them to work for them.
Mm.
Like I'm like, no, you pay me. I think you're confused. But look, I mean, these fucking the bigger companies that run these things, they're having the last laugh for sure. There's also, the other group that they prey on is like stay at home moms and military moms. And I'm just like, once you start to look at that, you're like, dude, something seems off. And then it's always like a fucking cult.
Yes.
Like if you counter with anything, they like bite back so hard. And I'm like, I'm not, I don't get into it with a hun. Okay. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
do this with these huns online. Anything that like anyone that's defending their business that hard, well, I say business with air quotes. um yeah, so those are just amongst some of the reasons. And also like the products are so ridiculously overpriced, and if you looked at why, you would know it's because they can't have like a bunch of inventory sitting on shelves, so they get
Mm.
people to buy it, but they're not buying in bulk. They're not buying the way that people are buying from your the company that you work for, like the major consumer goods where they're buying thousands of products. You're selling individually, that
Right.
margins are slim. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So, but that's also that. Understandably, that goes over people's heads. That's something that I know from sourcing products, and I didn't always know that. I just
Mm.
was like, oh, how do you make money when you pay $3 for something and no one wants to pay more than $6 for it?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and they're just they're cheesy. Can I just like be judgmental too? They're just cheesy.
I mean, it's true. Like a lot of these companies are swearing like that they've created like the next elixir that's gonna like, make you stop aging or it's gonna make you lose 50 pounds or it's just like ridiculous claims around a lot of this shit. And I agree with you. I really feel like they do target the most vulnerable populations among us. And it's sad. Like I feel like we have to talk about this stuff because they're preying on our people and they're like destroying lives. Like 99% of the people that get involved with MLMs never actually make more than like $1, y'all. Like it's crazy. So I don't think you would like sign up for any kind of track record when it comes to any other aspect of your life that has that shitty of a statistic. So like why would we get involved with this?
Yes, and it's just anything that you can't really like sort of explain how it's not like a pyramid scheme. Like I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. Like I know that it's not easy for us to explain like being a business strategist or financial coach, but this is something different. I'm like,
Right.
I also don't tell people, that they need to purchase these products before they even get in the door with me. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's shady business. It has a reputation, it is on the FTC's headlines for a reason, and none of them are good. So
Yeah. Be on the lookout, y'all. If anybody's asking you for money to start a business, walk away.
no, you
Walk
get that
away.
that email from someone in high school that starts with "Hey, boss babe," "Hey, hon," delete,
Yes.
delete, delete.
I love that advice. Carrie, so I'm curious, like now that you're out here living your best entrepreneurial life, how has that changed your relationship with money and how you move in the world?
So that has allowed me to, as of this year, start making contributions to causes that I believe in, a top line item in my budget, which I thought was really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Because I kind of used to look at that as like, well, whatever's left over, and I donate my time. But like, we know that money is like, it's the epicenter of everything. So that was really cool because I've been investing in the market now almost 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like not in the way that I'm investing in the last 4 to 5 years, but like all in. So I'm like, that's cool. It's amazing. And I can, increase it. But I think it's also, Janice, like that I know that my future me is secured and that window gets smaller and smaller, both in terms of my, we're getting older every day. So I'm always getting closer to that date, but also then the amount that I need to have gets, that grows, and when I get to access it, shrinks. And
Mm-hmm.
that's so fucking cool to be like, yo, 65 is taken care of, then like 55 is taken care of, and then it'll be 45. And I'm like, that's just so awesome that I'm like, we were able to create that. Like, I think the first couple months of this pandemic, I kind of moved through it like, okay, like it sucked and it was stressful, and like August was fucking rough for me. Like August
Mm.
was, I was getting fucking hammered with like work, then the bullshit with Instagram, and then my husband being furloughed. And I'm like, I now have, you know, the ability to like take some downtime and be like, yo, I want to shut the world off for a little
Yeah.
and like take some, downtime and just do nothing. And I can do that. And
I,
that's amazing because that like hustle and stress on your body and all that, like it's not great for you. I won't be able to have that, enjoy that money if I'm dead, or if I,
yo,
you know what I
facts.
mean? Or if I'm, 400 pounds and can't get around because I'm just sitting at my computer all day eating and, stressed out.
That's so damn true, yo. Like, I think that's the one thing about entrepreneurship that, like, I can't harp on enough. It's like this control over your time. And especially if you build like passive income streams. And when I say like passive income streams, I'll give you examples of some of mine. So, with my food blog, it basically just generates money on its own because there's ads hosted on it. So I'm legit getting like five, six, $7,000 checks a month, like for having a website just sitting there. Like, I
Yo,
don't even have to
that's why
publish
I'm
things.
I'm booking that class with you. I'm booking that session with you. I'm trying to get like that.
You know what I mean? Like, so the fact that like that I have that luxury literally gives me like this power to just not give a shit. Like, if my job calls me tomorrow and it's like, yo, we eliminated your position, I'm gonna be all right. You know what I'm saying? And like that kind of power, like it just elevates the way that you move in the world because you really are not letting money control you and like the decisions you make. You are like the ultimate fucking boss of your life.
Yep, and I don't know that I would be so connected to that feeling if we weren't in the pandemic. Because I'm like, well, pre-pandemic, I like to go on vacation. I like a little flex,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm like, oh no, this is really the gift that I'm like, I can just fucking chill.
Yes.
Like I
The
can
ultimate flex
relax.
is being able to
Exactly.
not do a motherfucking thing because you don't have to.
Yes. So that that is amazing. And yeah, just not like, also I will say being able to to support other women to do the same. Like I'm like, wow, I get to make money by digitally and financially empowering other women to do the same. And
Mm,
they will likely impart some of that to someone in their life. Like I'm like, that's so fucking cool. Like I literally don't, when I hear people complaining about their boss, and this is not, I do not look down on at all. Like people with the like, oh, I don't want a 9 to 5. I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm like, excuse me. Sometimes it's very fucking overrated too. It's great. It's
mm-hmm.
amazing. But sometimes I'm lonely and I'm stressed out.
Right.
Um, so
Yeah,
I'm
because this shit is legit 24/7. Like, don't get it
yeah,
fucking twisted.
exactly, exactly. But I'm like, it is so nice to like not have to think about like a boss. Like I'm
Yeah.
like that part is really, and not, no knock on my old boss. It's just like I don't want to be thinking about them in that way.
There's a trade off to everything, right? You can either have like the comfort and stability and security of like a 9 to 5. And I would say like comfort and stability in air quotes at this point because we really, there's a lot of people out here with the, like jobs that are putting them at risk and they have no choice but to do them because they need to do that to support their families. And shout out to all our first responders and essential workers, because y'all are the real MVPs. But at the same time, like, you are sacrificing a certain level of freedom and control over your life by having that type of role. Whereas, when it comes to entrepreneurship, yeah, you're going to be hustling all the time. You're going to be working more than you've ever worked, because at the end of the day, if you don't earn that money, guess who's not eating? But, you know, there's a cost. There's a cost to every choice. And it's just about figuring out which cost you're willing to pay.
Yes, exactly. Emotional dollars,
Yes.
dollars. So yeah, the way that I used to be so fucking stressed out about money all the time. Just like everything. Like when I went through, the financial crisis, like it literally, I was like, how, like what the fuck is being an adult? It was
Mm-hmm.
very challenging. And when I look back, I'm like, I didn't even really have big challenges. I had some like student loan debt. Okay, sure. Me and like everyone else,
Right.
but it was my relationship to it.
Yeah.
And it was the reality that like I didn't have, like back then I was like, no, figure it out. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just so nice because I know that like a lot of people, not even just in this country, like globally, like they don't, they don't have that. So peace of mind it's
It's a
great,
big deal.
worth it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I want to ask this last question before we wrap this up, and I love getting responses from all my guests because it is definitely the most inspirational, I think, question that we offer to folks. So, for somebody who is, in this entrepreneurship space, obviously channeling like money and abundance is a big thing. So, how do you do that? Do you have a mantra? Like, what do you say, or like, what do you affirm to yourself to channel success in your business?
I do have like a very simple, just straightforward affirmation to myself that I am an unstoppable, inspiring, and generous leader.
Mm,
And like more than enough to figure out what I need to figure out. But I also couple it with like writing down what is the fucking hardest thing that I've been through and coupling it side by side with what I think I'm going through right now. And I say I think because separating facts from the story that we're making up in our head is like crucial, right? Because
mm,
we awfulize and make things catastrophize shit, and it's just so 9 times out of 10 it's not actually happening. And when we do need, like the first day that COVID broke out, I was like, dude, we've got the water, the masks, the this, the that. Like anyone can jump into action when we're in survival mode, but it's that day to day shit that will wear you down. And
mm.
ultimately, it could kill you, stress and things like that. Those are killers. So, yeah, I remind myself that I am an unstoppable, inspiring, and generous leader. And then I start the list of what is the hardest thing that you've been through? How does this stack up to that? And it's usually I'm embarrassed by the, I'm like, yo, you are nothing but fucking drama. And I start to like laugh at myself a little bit. I'm like, oh, that's just you doing
I love that.
you.
Sometimes we need to get that perspective, because when you're in it, like, it can feel like the end of the world, but you got to remember like all the shit that you've been through, and that you have survived and you have thrived. So like, it's good to remind yourself of that. I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Carrie. So where can we find out more about you and follow your journey?
All right, so you can follow me on Instagram if you look up Kerry Kerry, Deliz, D as in David, E as in Edgar, Liz as in zebra. My handle is at Kerry4 Mayor, but I'm not going into politics. And then my website kerrydeliz.com, and I am on linkedin.com/Kerry Deliz. And if you Google Kerry Deliz, various articles and interesting things about me on my website will come up.
I love it. This convo has been so inspirational. Thank you so much for sharing all of your entrepreneurial and your money knowledge. I think people are going to get a kick out of this conversation. And I think you're definitely going to leave some people inspired to, you know, stop letting fear control their decisions, because that shit ain't going to get you nowhere. It's time to be brave and to handle your shit and start living your dreams.
Totally. 2020 is going to be scary anyway. So like, let's just go for broke. And I don't mean broke in your pockets. I mean, just go all in. Like just, it's going to be fucked up and scary anyway. So why not just go for the thing? Cause you choose your level of scary.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
I hope you're super inspired by this episode. It left me feeling like we all need to remind ourselves that it is absolutely fine and better than fine. It's absolutely necessary for you to take a good look at your life and decide if what you're doing right now is just not serving you anymore. Maybe that job is just not for you anymore. Maybe that career is not for you anymore. Maybe those bad money habits aren't for you anymore. And it's okay. You can make a change. You can decide right now that you're going to do something different and that you're going to take things into your own hands. And maybe that involves becoming your own boss. So until next time, guys, stay super freaking inspired. Stay motivated, stay fabulous, and stay poderosa. On the Yo Quiero Dinero podcast and associated entities, all information provided is for general information purposes only and does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, or other professional advice. Listeners should not act upon the content or information found here without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. We assume no responsibility for information contained on this podcast and associated entities and disclaim all liability with respect to such information, including but not limited to any liability for errors, inaccuracies, omissions, or misleading or defamatory statements. Usage of this podcast and associated content constitutes an explicit understanding and acceptance of the terms of this disclaimer.